All right, so if I had to take a guess, I would probably say that like 99.99997% of you guys have Serum downloaded on your computer, or at least know what Serum is. I get a lot of people asking me about how I make my Serum presets and like how I make my Serum banks and all that stuff. So I figured I would start this new series where I just kind of go over a certain type of sound in each video. And I'm gonna start today's episode with probably, in my opinion, the easiest like preset to make, which is basses. So for today's video, we got 3 things on the to-do list. Number 1, we got Serum overview. So basically, I'm just gonna like go over Serum with you guys. For those of you who don't know like how to use it, or you know what all the buttons do. Now keep in mind, I still don't know what probably like 50% of this plugin does, but I'm just gonna give you kind of my like half-assed version of how I get through Serum and how I'm able to like make presets and stuff. And then number 2, we're gonna do a preset breakdown. So I'm gonna go through like 2 or 3 of my old presets from like previous kits and just show you guys kind of like certain techniques that I used and like how I got to that sound. And then the final thing we're gonna do, step 3, is I'm just gonna make a preset from scratch with you guys. And I was thinking at maybe like the end of this whole series, I put together like a little mini kit of all of the like Serum sounds that I make from these videos, and then just give it to you guys for free. So without further ado, let's hop right into it. All right, so I got Serum pulled up, and like I said, step 1, we're just gonna kind of go through like the basics as far as like everything that I know. Like I said before, I don't really know like technically what a lot of this stuff does, but I know enough to get through it and make my own presets. So I'm just gonna kind of walk through each like individual thing that I think is important for you to know. So first off, I'm gonna break this down into like a couple categories. So we have the areas where your sound comes from, which is your oscillator A and oscillator B. Now these are where you pick like a table to use, and a table is basically just a frequency wave that produces your sound. So depending on the shape of this sound, it's gonna give you like a harsher sound or a more smooth sound. So I have a lot of tables from previous kits, but if you've just downloaded Serum, you'll pretty much just have the regular like analog ones that come with Serum. And there's a ton of good ones in here. The first couple banks that I ever made were all just using stock tables. So you can definitely find a lot of good stuff in there. So these 2 tables, like I said, this is where your bass sound is gonna come from. So then the other sound that you can have is a sub, and that's basically used for like low end stuff. And this is just gonna give you 6 basic shapes that you can pick from. So you can't choose your own like over here. It's just gonna give you 6 basic ones. And this is just really simple. It has like an octave button. So if you wanna have a higher octave or lower octave, you can adjust accordingly. And then you have a panning section where, you know, obviously you can pan the sound left or right. And then the level is basically just your volume. These are pretty standard across all of the oscillators. Like you have the level on these, you have a panning. With the oscillators, you have a lot more options to like fine tune the sound. So in here you have like your octaves, you can go up and down. You also have a semitone option. So you can go from a range of 0 all the way up to 12. And then you have your fine pitch knob. So if you wanna get even like more refined to a certain type of sound, you can adjust this. It goes all the way from 0 to 100. Then down here you have your unison, which is basically like how wide the sound becomes. So if you turn this all the way up to like 16, the sound is gonna be super wide in your headphones. And what I usually end up doing is if I ever turn this on, it's a good idea to turn the detune down to about halfway percent. That just makes it so the sound is a little bit more stable. And then I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what a lot of these other buttons do. I don't use them too often. The only other one I use is the wavetable positioning. And that just basically, let's say you have like this shape. When you turn this knob, it's gonna adjust the like positioning of all these waves. And that just offers a different type of sound, so you can mess around with that to get whatever you like. So that's it for basically like the your core sound elements of Serum. So then moving on to this section, it's your like noise category. And this is basically just another level of like textures that you can add to a sound. So there's a bunch of different stock options in here. Like You know, there's a bunch of like white noise. You can add like, you know, all these like glass shattered things and whatnot. And I'll get into a little bit more of what I like to use noise for when I break down some presets. But again, that just comes with your typical leveling adjustments and your panning. And this one has like a pitch, so you can pitch it up however much you want. And if you click on this little keyboard option, it will pitch up your sound by semitones instead of a percentage. So I think this is a lot easier to work with. And then this little button here, if you click that, it enables one-shot mode. So basically, every time a MIDI note is played, it's just gonna play the noise once instead of looping it a bunch of times over and over. So then over here, we have your filter category. And this is just controlling how much of the frequencies you're hearing. It's basically just like an EQ. So you can adjust this cutoff to let more frequencies in or cut more out. And then again, it's got a pan. And then drive basically is like volume. And then over here you have the mix knob, which basically controls all of the filter, like how much of it you're using. So then moving on to your envelopes, you have 3 different envelopes, and an envelope is basically what is gonna shape your sound. So the first option you have is the attack knob, and that's gonna control when your sound starts. So if it's all the way at 0, your sound is gonna start immediately once you hit play. If you turn this up, you can see that now the sound is gonna start gradually, and once it gets to this 1 second, it'll be playing the full sound. Then moving on to hold, this is basically just how long you want the note to play for. Then we have decay. It kind of does the same thing as the hold knob. It just determines, you know, how long you want the sound to play out for. Then we have the sustain knob. So I like to look at this visually as if like this section is where your sound is going to start, and then this is where it's going to end. So if you want the sound to carry through the entire MIDI note, you leave this sustain knob all the way up, because it'll then just play from here to here at full volume. But say if you turn it down to here, after like 2 seconds, you can see that this is labeled as 1, 2, and 3. So that's like how long the sound is gonna play for. When you get to 2 seconds, your sound is gonna be decreased to this level of volume. So it basically just controls, you know, like when you want the sound to cut off. And then your release knob determines how long the sound is gonna play for after the MIDI note ends. So if you want the sound to stop when the MIDI note stops, you would keep this at 0. If you wanted it to play out a little bit longer, like after the note is stopped, you would turn this up a little bit. This kind of offers a little bit of more like humanizing to your sound, because let's say if you were playing a real piano, when you lift up that key, you know, the sound isn't immediately going to stop. There's going to be a little bit of resonance after. So turning this up can add a little bit of humanizing to your sound. And then we have your LFO, which basically is like a controller for other knobs. So based on what this shape is, when you drag it to a certain knob, that knob is now going to reflect the shape that you've drawn here. So let's say I turn this LFO, I keep it on this bass, and I bring it to the volume level. When I play my sound, you'll notice that this section turned blue, and you'll see it moving according to what I've drawn here. So it's a little hard to explain, but it's really just a lot of messing around. And one thing I like to do is I'll scan through some presets that I like from people, and you can save this table. So if somebody has drawn in like a cool LFO that you like that you might want to use for a future sound, you can just go over here and click save shape, and then save it to your users section, and then you can use it for future sounds. And then you have the portamento knob, which if you just turn this up, that means that when another note starts playing, it'll kind of like do that sliding thing like you can do with like one shots and stuff like that. And if you turn this always button on, then that means every time that note is played, it's gonna slide. So typically I don't have this turned on because I don't like it how it slides like immediately when I start playing a note. I just want it to slide in between notes, not necessarily when one is starting. So that's pretty much it for this main page. I know it's a lot and it's pretty confusing, but it's really just a lot of messing around with different knobs and seeing what they do on your own, seeing what you like, stuff like that. So then we're moving up here. We have the effects category. And this is basically, I won't go through this in depth really, but these are like all different effects that you can add to your sound. So you have like a hyperdimension, which is basically like a width. You have a distortion plugin, a flanger, a phaser, chorus, delay, compressor, reverb, EQ, and a filter. So you can mess around with a lot of these knobs. These pretty much act like other VSTs. They have the same sort of like parameters. So if you're familiar with like just basic reverbs and EQs and distortions and stuff, you won't have a problem navigating through this stuff. So that's really about all you need to know for Serum as like a basic starting point. You'll definitely learn a lot more of like the intricate stuff the more you mess around with it. But for now, this is pretty much all you need to know. So moving forward to step number 2, I'm gonna show you guys a couple of my old presets and just kind of like break down certain aspects of them that I think are useful to know. All right, so like I said, we're doing basses for this episode. So I'm gonna show you guys a couple basses from my previous kits. This first one I got is this bass $1. It's from my first class kit with Kersey. So it's a pretty basic bass. There's a couple little tricks though that I wanna show you guys for it. I just have these 2 different tables. I have them lowered 2 octaves. And then I have the filter cutoff applied to both of them. So it's just rolling off all of the highs completely. I usually do this with most of my basses because I don't want high end mixing with like my other sounds. So I've picked this MG Low 12, which basically means it's a low pass filter. So it's letting the lows pass through the sound, and adjusting this will take off less or more of the high end. So if I leave it open, you can hear there's a lot of that high end. And then if I roll it off, you can hear that it went away. So the other key thing to this is the use of the noise. You'll hear that sort of like crinkling, sort of like key jangling sound that is happening when I play the note. That's coming from this noise. And one thing that I love to do with noises that I don't typically see a lot of other banks do is to outsource noises from other sort of like either one-shot kits or like go on Splice and get just like textures. You can drag anything into this noise section. So if you just go over and you get like a random one-shot like this, you can drag this over and apply it in here, and then it will like play in Serum. So I have this like weird sort of like key jangling texture that I added, and then all I'm doing is I turned this pitch knob on and I turned it up 12 semitones. And so now this sound is playing alongside of the other frequencies. It's just kind of like layering sounds together. This is one thing that I do for like a lot of my sounds, is just mess with random noises to add certain textures to Serum that Serum necessarily can't offer like on its own. So then we have this envelope, and what I always do is I just turn the attack up a little bit. That prevents your sound from clicking whenever you play the sound. And then I have the hold all the way down because it doesn't really matter that much, and I left the decay. And then I turn the sustain down about halfway percent because I want the sound to start off loud but then kind of like dip down a little bit. So you'll hear that it's not a solid level all the way through. Kind of dips down. And then I have the release turned up just a little bit because like I said before, it adds a little bit of humanizing. So when I let go of the note, it doesn't just stop immediately. You know, it has a little bit of that resonance after. And yeah, this one's pretty simple. I don't have any of the LFOs doing anything. And then I just have a flanger, a phaser. I usually just turn the mixes down on these to about 50% and I leave all of this stuff as it is. Then I turn on a compressor just to kind of like level everything out. And then one of my other biggest like sauce tips for basses is this filter preset on the effects channel. So I turn that on and I go to the miscellaneous tab and I get this reverb. And then I will turn the cutoff to 50%. And then I will turn the drive up. And that just kind of makes this like kind of boosts your sound all together. So it makes it a little bit louder and like hit a little bit harder. So yeah, that's it for this bass. It's a pretty simple one. Now I'll show you guys one that's like a little bit more complicated. All right, so we got this next one. It's a bass program. This one's actually not from any of my kits. I recently have made this for a kit that I was working on. But to break this one down, we have, again, 2 different oscillators. This time I pitched this one down only 1 semitone because I want more high end in this bass. And this one is pitched down 2. As far as like choosing what table you want to use, it's really all up to you to just cycle through and pick ones that you think sound good. Certain ones will give you more of just like a clean low end tone. Other ones will give you a lot more like high end and, you know, a little bit of like grit to the sound. So it's really up to you, whichever ones you want to use. I just like to cycle through a bunch of them until I find ones that I like. So for this one, I left the envelope pretty much as is, stock Serum, because I just want the note to last as long as I am playing it, and it just stops whenever I stop it. Then I have these 2 LFO shapes. This first one is adjusting the wavetable position and the cutoff knob. And the cutoff knob is set to this combs preset, which is basically like adding a bunch of distortion. And the way I've set up this envelope is that it's adjusting the cutoff knob back and forth as the sound plays, which is moving this combing preset. So it's like adjusting certain frequencies as the sound is playing, so you can hear it. You can see how it like moves back and forth as the sound plays. And then adjusting the wavetable position, like I said earlier, just sort of like introduces a little bit of variation to the sound that's playing. So kind of just like warps it. Then I have this second LFO that's a bit more of like a funky shape, and that's applied to the first oscillator's wavetable position, and that's doing the same thing. It's basically just adjusting the sound and getting different tones to play. So you can see how it's just like warping as the sound plays. And then on here I just have a distortion with this diode preset on. This is just adding a lot of that like high-end saturation. And then I have an EQ to kind of roll off like the super highs, so you're not getting like the piercing sounds. And then again, I have this reverb filter, and I boost the resonance to just kind of make the sound overall a little bit more like beefy. So yeah, that's really it for 2 different basses that I wanted to show you guys. One more simple and one with a little bit more variation. So now I'm going to open up a blank Serum, and we're just gonna kind of make a preset together. I'm just gonna mess around with a bunch of stuff and see what we can make. All right, so for this one, I think I wanna go with something similar to that last preset, where it's got some movement to it, and it's just like a simple clean bass. So what I'm gonna do first is just open up a random table and pitch it down 2 octaves. And what I always do is I just put a C note here so I can listen to the sound as it plays. So I like this one. It kind of almost sounds like a CTM 808. So we're just gonna keep this, and we're gonna add another wavetable. And this one I'm gonna add just a basic sine wave, so I get that low, like clean bass tone. I'm gonna turn the filter on and take the highs off. Then one thing I'm gonna do is that filter trick. So I'm gonna take this reverb and boost the drive up a little bit. So that's good. Next thing I want to do is add a little bit of variation to the sound. So I'm gonna go through some of the presets that I have in here and just kind of find a random one. I'm gonna drag it onto the wavetable. I'm gonna turn the rate down to 4 bars because I want it to like I want the like effect to last longer across the entire sound. So I actually just got rid of this like second half because as you could hear when I started the sound and put this on the wavetable, it like added that nice punch to the bass. So I want to keep that, and I might actually adjust it to 2 bars. And I'm gonna adjust the wavetable up a little bit so it doesn't just like cut off at this point. So I like how that's sounding. Next, I'm gonna add some sort of noise to just get a little bit of texture in there. And I went ahead and turned the one-shot mode on just because I want the sound to only play once when the MIDI starts. I don't want it to keep looping. All right, so I found this. It's just like this random like chord noise. It's like a one-shot piano, but I think it just adds a little bit of like cool low texture to the bass, so you guys can hear that. And that's pretty much all I would do for this. I might mess around with some of these, make the sound a little bit wider, turn on some distortion so we can get like a little bit of the high end frequency. And then if you wanted to, you could add maybe like a phaser, turn this down. I usually turn this BPM sync, so that means that the phasing rate syncs to whatever BPM you're at. So yeah, that's pretty much how I would make a bass. I think this one's pretty cool, and I will go ahead and save this. Another thing that I'll show you guys quick is if you want to save your own tables. So whenever you make a Serum bank, it's good to put the table that you used in the Serum bank folder that you're making so other people have the table. If you don't do that and you've used a custom table, then whoever loads in Serum with your preset won't be able to use it because they need that specific table. So in my opinion, it's good to just save every table as a separate thing to put in your own kit. So to do that, you click this little pencil tool, and this is the method that I've found that works pretty easily. You just find a blank spot up here, so one where there's no green, and you just click and drag it all the way down back to 0, and then you exit, and then this little like save icon will show up, and then you can save it to wherever you would save like stuff to put in your kit. After I finish a preset, what I usually do is up in this section, I'll double click and I'll add my name, and then come over here to this little save icon, and we'll just go call it a YouTube kit. And then this is where you would save your preset. So I made a bass, so what I like to do is just say bass dash, call it whatever you want. So we'll just call it custom 1. Then you hit save, and that's it. So that's pretty much it. Now you've saved your preset. And yeah, now you can move on to making a new one. Also another thing, if you've made a preset and you want to make a new one, you can go over here and click initial preset, and that'll just kind of like wipe out everything on Serum and bring up the starting page again. Do not click that button if you have not saved your preset yet. I can't tell you the amount of times I've done that and lost like everything I was doing. So yeah, definitely don't recommend that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys learned something from this. Like I said, this is going to be a new series. So next week we'll cover like a different type of sound. Next week's video will probably be a lot shorter just because I'm not going to go through all of like the technicalities of Serum. I just wanted to do that in this first video in case people watching aren't familiar with the plugin. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something. As always, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. Follow me on Instagram. I'm trying to get to 3K so we can drop my 3K drum kit. But yeah, without further ado, I will see you guys next time. Peace.